cool.
You haven't been to the Thai house?
No, I haven't. But I think I remember talking to Andrea. She was the one who kind of made it sound, you guys kind of helped start it, get kind of famous, I think.
Yeah. That was back in the day. I mean, the guy had just had an Airbnb and had no reviews or photos whatsoever.
So
very bad photos.
Everyone that's tuning in, we're going to give, 4 or 5 minutes for people to kind of settle in, come join us. If you want, there's a comment section in the bottom. It would be great if you could say hello, tell us where you're watching from. Let us know if you've ever taken Charly's or Alex's workshop. We're just going to chit chat here for a few minutes and wait until everyone gets in, and then we'll start. We'll have kind of a more formal start to the workshop.
Sweet. The Netherlands. Portugal. Yeah. We're all in the same time zone. For once, I feel like I'm in the same time zone as people in Europe. It's the night here. It feels proper.
What time is it there, Alex? What is it? It's 6 p.m.
7:02.
7 p.m.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And the sun is just rising here.
Well, it's Alaska in the winter, yeah?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I miss that place.
You should come visit.
Yeah, I was talking about that with Andrea. Like, we'd like to be back. We just didn't know what season to come back. Like last time we did summer, and it was a bit disappointing because it just rained a lot.
Yeah. I would say fall.
Which is August.
Yeah, I would say
it starts so early. I remember trees are turning orange in August.
Yeah, and it's only like 3 weeks, so you have to like plan it perfectly because then it's just gone. But it was so beautiful.
Oh damn. Okay, so fall, because winter it's too dark, I guess.
Oh, I actually think winter's perfect because sunrise is at 9, so you can sleep, and then
we'll take that.
Yeah, and then sunsets at 4:30, so you can like do a full day, and it's like gorgeous.
The sun must be so low too. Like in Iceland, it must be like blue out, almost nice light all day.
Yeah, we kind of had that kind of like midnight sun kind of like light, but it's been pretty overcast so far because it's been like snow clouds, which is also cool.
The gray ones, yeah. I remember being shocked last time I went to Alaska. I mean, not last time. The first time I went to Alaska, because there was lots of snow in Montana, and it was early November. And when I went to Alaska, I was expecting even more snow because it's more in the north, and there was not much snow. It's like a introduction to weather patterns.
That's very strange. Yeah, it kind of hits every year at different times. Like last year, it weirdly hit in like October, and now it's just hitting, but it's in like full force. But it's more like January, February, March is like the crazy snow seasons where it's going to be like
yeah.
I think I saw too you on one of your stories, Charly. You're very excited to get back into skiing.
Oh yeah,
winter. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but I'm excited to relearn, and I want to do cross country and touring as well.
Cool.
Yes.
That's a possibility.
You got Girdwood, not too far.
Yep. Well, I can even just go to Hilltop, which is like down the street, and they have like little bunny hills that everyone like goes.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I've never been to Hilltop.
Okay, so we're like 5 minutes in. I can see we have quite a few people that have already joined. People are tuning in from all over the world, from England, Vancouver, Spain. Jaime, nice to see you.
France as well, I saw. Italy, that's so cool.
Before we get started with these two very exciting guests. So on behalf of Wildest, I want to thank everyone so much for joining us this morning as we discuss photographing the wild. My name is Joel Fuller. I'm the community lead here at Wildest. We are so incredibly lucky to have both Charly Savely and Alex Strohl join us this morning for what will be an hour of notable stories, advice, tips, and Q&A. Firstly, I would like to welcome Charly Savely, a travel, wildlife, and commercial photographer who has now settled in Anchorage, Alaska, after traveling and living out of her Mitsubishi Delica. Alaska captured her heart because of its wilderness, amazing people, and its rough landscape. Known for her incredibly intimate wildlife portraits, among many other things, Charly is focused, Charly, amongst many other things, Charly is focused and passionate about capturing the disappearing Arctic and minimalist moments. She is our first of many female instructors here at Wildest, a Sony Alpha ambassador, and last month launched the wildlife photography workshop with us. Thank you so much for being here, Charly.
Thank you.
Secondly, I'd like to welcome Alex Strohl. Alex is the co-founder of Wildest, someone with a deep desire and passion to share his knowledge, to tell meaningful stories through his timeless images and films. An adventure photographer who has carved the path and inspired so many of us who have fallen in love with photography and the outdoors. A man in love with a good cortado, the perfect al dente pasta, wheels of manchego, and someone who breathes endless curiosity. Thank you so much for being here, Alex.
Thanks, Joelman. I think I got myself the perfect new bio for my website. Thank you.
Hey, no worries. I'm so happy that you're both here. Charly, where are you coming in from? You're at home in Anchorage right now?
Yep, I'm just at home in Anchorage in our little A-frame cabin, and the sun is just starting to rise. It's good.
Awesome. And Alex, you're in France?
Yes. Yeah, I've been here for a month and a half, just when lockdown started. And I'm in the woods right now, so luckily the internet is hanging. So hopefully I don't go over the quota, or, a wild boar doesn't eat the phone line like it's happened before. But, so far so good.
Awesome. Sounds great. So let's just go through a few housekeeping questions, or a few housekeeping things. This morning, Alex and Charly are both going to be answering questions about photographing the wild and their workshops. A huge thank you to everyone that has enrolled so far in Charly's workshop, the wildlife photography workshop. We're very grateful for everyone that's enrolled, and anyone that's enrolled in any of our workshops for that matter. Today, if you're interested, Charly's wildlife photography workshop will be on, you can get it 50% off if you use the code WILD50. That's capital WILD 50, just for this hour. So if you're interested, if you hear what Charly says and you feel inspired, go check that out. A couple things about how this webinar works. So in the bottom, there's a chat window. I can see everyone saying hello, where you're from. This is excellent. And then also there's another section that says Q&A. So if you go to the Q&A, you can ask any question that you want Charly or Alex to ask. And you have the ability to upvote those questions, so they'll come to the top. And there's a better chance that we'll be able to ask Charly and Alex about that. If you enjoy this webinar, you're more than welcome to watch it afterwards on our YouTube channel. So let's get started. And because we're talking about photographing the wild, let's start with that. Why have each of you been so attracted to capturing the wild? Charly, let's hear from you first.
I mean, that's such a big question. I think, do you mean wild is just in nature, or do you mean wild as in wildlife? First?
I would say maybe a little bit of both. Like what draws you to the wild, and then what has drawn you to wildlife?
Okay. I think just the wild in general. I've been outdoorsy since I was born. I grew up in a little village in England named Wickwar, and I would always be going outside, exploring in like the fields by my house and pretending to like get lost in the forest. And that kind of just being raised that way has made it so that I always just have loved the outdoors. And then wildlife, that's something I'm super passionate about because, seeing an animal in the wild is such a special thing, but then being in that moment with the animal is incredible. And you just fall in love with it the more and more you do it. And it forces you as a photographer to give up all your control and just let the animal do its thing, which is awesome.
Amazing. Alex, do you want to go off that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to shoot as much wildlife as Charly has, like I was looking at your portfolio, Charlie, this morning again, and yeah, so there's a lot of animals, and it's so cool because I've always wanted to do more of that, and I've never really made the time to do so. Like you said, like there's something beautiful about letting animals do their thing. And usually I'm not patient enough for that sometimes. So I'll go by, I'll see a moose crossing the road. I'll take a photo and I'll keep going because I'm trying to get somewhere to do my little mission. So I think that's one of the things that we can all learn from you is patience. Just seeing you in the workshop being present and just waiting for things to happen. I think it's a beautiful thing. I'd like to do more of. I think the wild for me is not only about photography, is more of a sort of a thing that you experience, you go out, and then if you come back with some photos, it's even better. But what attracts me is just being out with people that I enjoy being with, and then the environment becomes a sort of canvas. And I think when I come back home, I feel just so replenished from that. So whether I'm taking photos or not, that's what happens. And I really believe in being sort of on or off. When I'm on these things, like if I'm going to take photos, I want to be even more present. I think somebody asked, I'm sure you come across this a lot, but people ask, hey, is taking photos in the wild taking away from your experience in the wild? And I wouldn't think so. I think it's actually enhancing it because you're just more laser focused on what's going on with the light and just like, oh, there's a puddle. I don't know, these things become more magical when you're trying to take photos of them. So that's kind of my long-winded explanation about the wild.
Awesome. Charly, would you agree with Alex how photography lets you to be present when you're in the wild, or do you like to have a camera when you're really photographing and put it down sometimes as well?
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit of the opposite. I think I get so zoned in that I become unaware of what else is going on, especially if it's wildlife. I'm so focused on the animal that I'm not like seeing the beautiful like sunset that's like going off behind me, and someone will be like, turn around and look, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, so it's like, I feel like for me it's the opposite, and I constantly have to like actually I get so focused on the details that I'm not seeing the bigger picture, so I have to constantly like stop and be like, okay, what's the whole scene, kind of a thing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I just want to make sure everyone knows I see some people commenting in the Q&A where they're coming from. Let's keep the Q&A for the questions because we're going to get to those. And if you want, just mention where you're from or say hi in the chat, and that would be much appreciated. Charly, you recently launched the wildlife photography workshop with us. Can you tell us a bit more about that and the process behind it?
Yeah, that was such a incredible, crazy, life-changing experience. The workshop for me was so special. The team flew up here to Alaska, and we flew to Katmai National Park, which is this really special place where we get 40% of the world's salmon from there. There are bears everywhere just getting super fat, and they don't even really care about humans because they're just so focused on fishing. And it's really like probably the only place I would feel safe even photographing bears, because obviously it's very scary. But yeah, it was such a special place, and just being with the team, and we had such an amazing time. And our pilot too that we flew with was such a character, and it really felt like surreal, like we were kind of in a movie while making a movie.
Yeah, I heard from the team. I wasn't able to join, but the team said the pilot was incredible, and the guides that you had, and Katmai looked absolutely unbelievable. The bears you saw, the pictures that you were able to capture, incredible.
I'm pretty bummed I wasn't there.
Yeah, you would have loved it. Like, our pilot was just this, amazing, Alaskan bush pilot who's like, I first knew that I was gonna never leave Alaska when I went into a bar and I saw a fight, and I was like, yeah. It was just like
Chuck Norris flies the plane.
Yeah, like very rough. It was really cool.
I mean, just I don't know. All the footage looks really good. I can't even. And your photos from it. I mean, I've posted some of them, and yeah, it's like, damn, this is good.
Yeah, it was just, I ran through memory cards so fast because everything we saw was just like one thing after another. Was so amazing.
You get the sense that you were looking for something though. Like, I don't know that I would have taken these photos, or like, somebody else would have taken the same photos. I think that something different shown through these.
Thank you.
Charly, what do you hope students, like, you put a lot of your heart and soul into the workshop. What do you hope students can take away? What can they learn from your workshop?
I think a few things. I think my biggest things that I hope for is, first of all, that women feel super empowered by watching it. And I've gotten a lot of messages about that, which has been super encouraging to see, women feeling, wow, like I can go do this too. And I think my biggest thing too is people learning how to respect wildlife if they want to get into, wildlife photography, and understanding that wildlife photography and conservation kind of go hand in hand. Once you start photographing animals, you care about them more, and then you want to protect them. So you also get into conservation a bit. I think that is probably the biggest things. And also a huge thing would be for my editing portion is finding your own style, not just watching this workshop to like learn or, get a style that's just like mine, to really think about what you're doing and find a style that you love that is like unique to you.
Yeah, what was that process like for you personally? Did it come, you've been photographing for a few years. I'd like to hear about this from you, Alex, as well. But that style is, I know a lot of people are going to have questions about developing their own style. And was that something that you kind of mixed from outside inspiration, or how did it kind of come to be over the last few years?
I think when you're starting out and you're developing, you kind of look at everyone else around you, and that inspires you and kind of like helps you to grow and learn. But then I think there becomes this breaking point where you realize and discover what you like and what your voice is, and then you start going with that. And I feel like that's kind of when you've finally like found your own style, and you find your color palette and the colors you love. You learn if you love to do things natural or like more artistically, and you experiment with all of that until you find like what's kind of you and what sticks.
Okay, Alex, do you want to chime in on your how you've come across a person?
Yeah, I think the whole like style and sort of visual identity conversation is endless, right? And my answer has changed throughout the years. So I'm constantly learning this question. I think I kind of look at it as the same as writing, right? When you read something from a writer and you're like, yeah, I've thought that, I felt that, I've lived that, that kind of hits home with me. That's what I would expect with my photos, is that people feel like I'm putting into images what they're thinking or feeling, the same way that somebody would put something into words, that everybody's thinking, but nobody's saying, or nobody knows how to say. So visually, I'm trying to achieve that, which is showing what people are thinking, what I am thinking, and making that cohesive throughout the years. It's easy to get bogged down on style, because I think people think style is only editing, right? But it's so much more. I think it goes beyond that. I think it's, as photographers, right, and filmmakers and whatnot, I think it's our job, our responsibility to document life as we see it, right? If we want to be committed to that, we just have to document. And then that's what goes first, is just documenting, knowing what you're after. And you don't always know what you're trying to shoot. I think it grows with time. Like, it's like your first hike with a camera, you'll take 4,000 photos, and your 100th hike, you might take 400 photos, or 40 if you're using a film camera. But I think essentially it's just about repeating, right? Repeating, but still being discerning with yourself when you're doing the editing, right? Like when you're trying to reduce the catalog. So style, yeah, I mean, that's another question. Is style only editing? I don't know.
Charlie, what do you
What do you
think?
think, Joel? Yeah.
What do I think? No. What does Charlie think?
I think that's really an interesting thought. I think also like even when you've found your editing style, outside of that, I think once you've kind of found your voice too, you kind of live and breathe that, and it kind of goes into everything into your life, like not even just your photos. It can even then come into like the way you decorate your house, and
Yeah.
you just really find this like sense of you, I guess.
True. I mean, you probably felt that, when you meet somebody new person, and you go to their house, you get in their car and they play music, it oftentimes matches their photography, their work, their output. And then I think we're seeing it in similar ways, which is, style is just what a person consumes and produces, I guess, input, output. But yeah, I mean, well-curated people in photography have well-curated lives. I think.
Charlie, in your workshop, and in some interviews I've read, you talk about how the minimalism you try and portray in your photography is kind of like, life is so busy. All of our lives are so incredibly busy, and there's, we can all be, things make us anxious, blah, blah, blah. But the minimalism plays a huge part for yourself too, right? Because of the busyness of life.
Yeah. And I think that again goes back to finding your own style. Minimalism isn't for everyone. There are so many famous photographers that have photos that are just chaos, and I love that. But I look at it and I'm like, wow, I don't even understand how you even take a photo like that, because it's so different from what I do. And it's just become a thing that over the years, my eye now seeks out things that look simple, and I won't even take a photo if it's not like pleasing to me in that way, if it's not like giving me a sense of calm, if it's not like helping reduce anxiety. And then that just kind of gets stronger as you keep searching for those things. I don't know if that answered your question, actually.
No, that follows the question for sure. I got a question. You are our first female instructor at Wildest, and we're so incredibly grateful. And we hope there will be many more. In your workshop at the start, you kind of talk about how there was, for a while when you got into photography, you'd look at the ambassador programs of certain camera manufacturers, and there was a lack of women on some of these teams and stuff. How does it feel? Now, there's could be a lot of young women or any women photographers that can look up to you. How do you feel about that? And are you excited to kind of take on that, be in a role model for so many?
Yeah, it was crazy. I know, Alex, you're with Canon, so I don't want to hate too much, but I remember I was like looking up the teams of all of them, and it was all men on like Nikon as well. And Sony was the only camera company that had the women's, alpha female program, where they're like really gunning for female photographers. And that's what kind of led me to go with them. And yeah, I think it's crazy. There are more and more every day, more and more I find female photographers, and I'm like, yes. But for a long time, it was really difficult to find a landscape female photographer or a wildlife female photographer. There would always just be, it would be so male dominated. And I'm so glad to see, even just by doing this workshop, I've had wildlife photographers like message me, female wildlife photographers, and I've been like, oh yes, like I found another one. Like, so I think that's really cool. And I'm excited just to see more and more step up.
Absolutely. It's very exciting. It's really cool that you made it into the Sony Alpha Ambassador program, because so many people look up to anyone that's an ambassador for, especially a large camera manufacturer like Alex with Canon or you with Sony. We got a question from Romain Carrera for you, Charly. How is the impact of humans at these places, for example, where you just shot the workshop? And is it likely free of people and tourism? Are these places changing? Is tourism important for these places? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think in regards to, obviously social media has ruined a lot of places, and that's like the ugly side of it. someone posts a photo in a beautiful spot, and then, everyone wants to go there and take the same photo, or, even just see the same thing. And I think that's been, one of the biggest downfalls with Instagram. But at the same time, we really have to, as a community, step up and, be respectful of the places that we're visiting. And I think, ecotourism can work. We can visit these places while still taking care of it. Alaska is definitely a little bit different. There's not enough people here, really. Well, we survive, like Alaska survives off of tourism, so we need it. But it's so spread out, it's the size of, I think it's California, Montana, and Texas combined. Only 20% of it is roaded. So tourists can't get everywhere. It's very expensive to charter a plane or a bush plane and go to these spots, or charter a boat. So you don't really get the massive crowds that you get everywhere else. And I think that's a good thing, because it's so wild up here. It should stay as wild as it can for as long as possible. That's my personal opinion. But places like where we filmed the workshop, it was so remote. There was no one there, but it was also a very expensive trip. So yeah, but when you get there, just making sure you leave it better than you found it, never leaving trash, things like that. That's like how we can keep these places good.
Mm-hmm. Alex, do you want to say anything about that?
I mean, I agree with Charly that one of the downfalls of social media in general is overcrowding places that, and I think the problem is not necessarily Instagram or people sharing these photos. Is that the problem is that there's a time between administration catching up, like a country, a government, and adapting something for mass tourism, right? Because, there's that on the cliffs of Moher in Ireland, for example, the Eiffel Tower, whatever. They're ready for mass tourism, no problem, no damage. It's been all fixed up. But when you go to Norway and you post, a photo of the Reinebringing, that little hike that goes above Rhine, the Lofoten Islands, that shows the whole town, and this trail was built for 1,000 people a year, and there is 10,000 people a month, then obviously that's an issue, right? The last time I was there, it was before it was being renovated. There was literally rocks falling from the side of the mountain because the trail became a riverbed from people hiking up. So it was just really gnarly. And there was actually monks from Tibet who are going to come build stairs. So I am sure they're now built, and this hike is much better now. So I don't think it's kind of like, when people used to illegally download movies or songs, like the government has to tries to forbid, to make things forbidden and illegal, but maybe it's because the offering hasn't caught up yet, right? Now there's Netflix, and there's no real need to download movies like before. So same thing with places like whatever there's mass tourism, like Iceland's been trying to do that to catch up to mass tourism with infrastructure. So there's a proper way to do it. So I think as a photographer, when you go somewhere, that you want to share with people, and you feel like you're a pioneer to this place, you have to think about, is this place ready for mass destruction? And if it's not, then don't tag them, right? Don't tag it. It's kind of like, going into Glacier Park, people are like, oh, why do you tag Glacier Park in Montana? I'm like, I mean, it's ready for that. Like, tourism can happen, no problem. It's not a secret. It's one, America's number 9th most visited national park, so it's ready for that. But then you keep the rest to yourself, right? Because it's not ready for that in Montana, for example.
There's a really interesting question here from Toby. Toby Roney. He's asking a question about motivation. So I've had the opportunity to work alongside Alex for quite a few different projects, and I can say that Alex is like one of the hardest working people I've ever met. Where when he's focused and dialed, things I don't know, the determination to fix or to break up a large task and work block hours is quite incredible. And so Toby's just kind of wondering, I'm going to ask both of you, is how do you, I know you've said this before, Alex, you're kind of like an inherently lazy person, but you kind of do all of these, micro routines and things. And
just trick myself into productivity.
Yeah. So how do you trick yourself into productivity or motivation? How do you sit through a bunch of emails, and how do you edit sometimes when you're not in the mood? Is there some secrets?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but I think because we could talk about it for hours, but it just comes down to mechanisms. Like what mechanism is in place for me to do this, right? If there isn't one in place, then it's not going to get done. So I believe in processes, and it sounds a bit boring, but it's, process can be something as dumb as tomorrow I want to do yoga. Cool. Well, if I just say that, it's not going to happen. But if tomorrow morning, when I just write out my little plan for the day, I put yoga 11 a.m., random time, boom, guess what? I'm 11 a.m. I'm going to do my yoga just because I have an appointment with myself that I set, and I don't want to disappoint myself. So same thing with that. If you make a promise to yourself, you can't break it. And if you don't want to make a promise to yourself, then it's okay too, right? You have to be okay with all sides. I used to be a bit more of a tyrant with myself in the past, and I've learned to chill out a bit, right? There's downsides to motivation. But yeah, processes. I'd say that, Toby.
Awesome. Charly, what would you say?
I would say that's probably one of my biggest struggles, honestly, is like, getting the self-discipline to get things done. Sometimes I kind of do the thing where I let it all pile up and then I get so overwhelmed, but then I also thrive way better under pressure. So it's kind of this like ugly cycle of like letting it pile up, getting overwhelmed, and then busting it all out and getting it all done, which I don't think is the best, but it seems to be the only way that I keep doing it. And I think also kind of like similar to what Alex said, I used to be like a lot more, well, maybe I still am like type A, like very rigid in like, well, I guess I still am. I always like have a schedule and making to-do lists and things like that. But this year, definitely with the pandemic and everything, has just really taught me to, and live after living in the van, is I've had to be like, whoa, I have to stop. Like I have to rest. I have to not be working on the weekends like anymore, because it just became that I never was off my computer. I was always just had email up every day of the week. And I had to be like, whoa, okay, learning rest is very important.
Question here for you again. Charly, is how did you decide to shoot with Sony? Like, did they reach out to you? Did you try other brands before shooting at Sony? And how did that come about?
Yeah, I was with Canon forever. I loved Canon's colors. I love their colors. I still do. It was again kind of the same thing where I just was realizing that Sony was supporting women a bit more. And so I rented one of their cameras and I tried it out. And just for me, it was how fast it is and the focusing. My Canon at the time still only had, like 30 focal points that you had to choose from, but Sony was already like, oh, anywhere on the screen is a focal point. And I was like, and they had, I think Canon and Nikon are catching up, but they had the animal eye focus and the human eye focus. So I could just lock on and everything was always sharp. And that's what kind of converted me.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think they're all pretty, like, the animal eye focus from the Sony, from what I've read, I read way too much on camera gear. I think all of us are very passionate about camera gear, et cetera. Is pretty spectacular, but it seems like any camera, any camera that you get now that's pretty new is going to be a phenomenal camera. And it should not be I think we can all agree that it's not a restrictive thing for you, depending on which camera, gear can be.
Yeah, I think it's so personal preference. It really is. And, now all of these brands are coming out with like their version of mirrorless and they all seem amazing too. So it's really just about finding what you like. And it's so personal to each individual.
Wildlife photography, you rented that beautiful lens in your workshop and stuff. And in your workshop, you do talk about when it comes to wildlife photography, you do sometimes need a bit of a longer lens. Is there something that you could recommend that, not all of us can get the 400 2.8 or f4 or whatever, but what is something, for people that just want to start shooting more wildlife in general?
Yeah, I got a bunch of, comments and DMs of people being like, oh, well, you have the 400 to 2.8 for this workshop. I could never afford that. And yeah, I can't afford that. Like, that's an expensive lens, but there's renting, so that's what we did. We rented, and renting is available to everyone, which is great. So it's just also just about working with what you love. Like I had the 24-70 for I think like 3 years before I even had any other lens. So that really helps you to like master kind of those focal lengths. And then, from there, even if you can't, get the crazy master one, like I love personally the 135, and then you can put a teleconverter on that. So you can get even closer, but you don't always need, a long lens for wildlife. Sometimes I've been in situations where I'm way too close and then I forgot a wide lens. And then I'm like, damn, I wish I had the wide lens so I could get like the mountains in the background. So it's all about having different variations and focal lengths and experimenting and playing with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a really interesting question. Both of you have, we have a younger student with us right now. The name is Sloan, 10 years old. I'd like to hear the answer from both of you. A dream I have is to become a photographer and filmmaker. What advice could you either of you give up to help me steer me in that direction? Alex, can we hear from you? 10-year-old. What's the inspiration?
10 years old.
It's
I had
really
no idea what I wanted to do at 10 years old. You wanted to be a pilot or an astronaut. That's pretty good. He's already many ways ahead. Then he's going to go far. What's his name? What's your name?
Sloan.
Sloan. Well, I mean, obviously, Sloan, you need to have a camera, right? Just gotta convince your mom for Christmas or your dad to get you a cheap little film camera, and then you got to beg for film. And then I'm saying just because it'd be easier, you don't need a computer or anything, right? You can just shoot photos and then give them to a lab and convince your grandma to pay for the lab. I just say shoot photos, obviously, and then read books.
Awesome. Charly, what would you say for a young person that's just really interested in photography or film?
Yeah, I think it's so hard for me to even wrap my mind around the fact that 10 years old on a computer, and I'm like, wow, when I was 10 I did not even have a computer. No, Zoom didn't even exist. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, if you can get a disposable camera, I don't know if you have that yet or not. I think they're you can get them at like Walgreens. Get a little disposable camera and start shooting around and just find what you like, shoot everything, and then keep going with which one you like the most.
Awesome. Okay. At the beginning, we said we'd also talk about some notable stories. So this is a question from Corbin that is directly related to a notable story I would like to hear from both of you. You guys seem to talk about the empowerment and the awe of capturing a shot of these animals. What was one of those moments where a photograph gave you the chills, excitement, or a very strong emotion? Can you name a moment, or do you have a story where you have captured something kind of extraordinary and it made you feel something? Alex, do you want to go first?
No, Charly, you go first.
I think one of my favorite moments I've had in wildlife photography specifically was, I think it was last year. It was our first time driving up to Alaska, and we were driving, through I think it was in the Yukon, or no, maybe it was end of BC. I'm not really sure. And, when you're doing the drive, there is bears, moose everywhere, just along the drive going through Canada. And there was this one bear, and I slowed down, and I was, just shooting from the window of my car, and it was this beautiful little brown bear. And then he or she turned sideways and half of its face was missing. And I was like, oh my God. And I ended up spending an hour there, just pulled over on the side of the road, and the bear was just sitting there in the bushes eating berries, just super, happy, just eating the berries, and just realizing oh my gosh, and thinking about the story of this bear and what it had survived, and was it still in pain? I don't know. All of it looked like it was healed, but at one point it was probably really struggling to survive. And just thinking about how nature can overcome such crazy things. It can overcome huge pain and then like still be surviving was incredible. And it was really cool. After I posted that photo, I got a bunch of DMs from other people that have seen this bear, and like it's cool to, if someone sees it in Canada and they like send me an update, like it's still going strong. So I think that's really cool.
Alex, a moment?
My story is, I mean, it's not going to be remotely as deep as Charlie's because I haven't spent enough time with wildlife. I'll talk about the first time I shot a photo of a buffalo or bison in Wyoming or Montana, somewhere in there. And that was pretty clueless. So that was, usually when you're clueless, you're kind of dangerous. So just driving around, there's like a bison side of the road, just eating, it was snowy and it was just eating grass. And I just pull out, at the time I only had like a 24 lens, prime. I thought it was the only thing you could shoot with. And I just went out and just, the light was getting good. So I'm taking photos of the bison as if it is, I don't know, a swan or something. And I'm literally, I could touch it if I wanted. I was that close to the bison, who was massive. And I still have these photos. I was just taking photos of it. And I get back into the car and, I was like, cool, that was really nice. Like, what an animal. There was no signs of aggression towards me. I didn't know it could even be aggressive. I thought it was just like a big cow or something, I had no idea. It was years ago. I thought it was just, nice animal. And then I showed these photos with some people, some friends, like, dude, what are you doing? Is that a zoom lens? How are you so close to this animal? I don't know. I just had no idea I could harm me or in any way. And then obviously I started, just looking at videos of bisons ramming people who get too close and smashing into cars. And I was like, holy shit, what a dumbass. So luckily I got unscolded with some cool photos, but they're not responsible to show people because it was just a really bad idea. But I definitely was moved by the moment though, as I was that close to this animal. There's like smoke, like steam coming out of its nose because it's so cold. I was like, this guy is just spending life out here in this field.
It would be hard to imagine there was a time, in North American history when there would have been millions and millions of these things roaming wild. I always think about that.
Just all there was, yeah.
It would have been a different time. This is an interesting question. So I think a lot of us as creatives, obviously both of you, I think have gotten past this and are very comfortable sharing a lot of your work. But this is a question, I'm from an anonymous question. I'm quite shy and insecure about my photography and creativity. Do you guys have any tips on how to overcome that? I'd love to be proud of my photos and show them to others without feeling awkward or insecure. Love both of your work. Do you have any words on that?
I think something that will help you overcome feeling insecure is, again, when you find your style and you find your voice that really empowers you, and you get to a point of like, I don't care if people don't like this photo, I like it, so I'm going to keep going in this direction. And I think it's such a hard thing, but if you just keep focusing on you and try your hardest to, not listen to comments. Obviously, good critique is very helpful. So getting good critique from people you admire can help you to learn, but try to block out any negativity and just turn a blind eye to it as much as you can. I think that's what I had to do anyway.
Alex?
I 100% agree with Charlie. It's you have to show and shoot, and I've been guilty of this for a long time. You have to show what you're interested in personally, right? You have to show what is interesting to you, because then you'll develop maybe a handful of people who are interested in what you're seeing, right, versus what they want to see. So I'd say, just because your photography doesn't represent you as it does represent you as a person, but your self-worth shouldn't be based on what photos you take, or you're just much more than a photographer, right? You're a friend, you're all these words, and photography is just one of them. So if somebody doesn't like it, shouldn't change your self-worth.
Here's an interesting question from Brady Clark. Question for both of you. As people who sound type A. I don't know, you don't have to say that you're type A, but you both seem to be very focused on schedules and deadlines. How does creativity work its way into your life? Like, are you blocking out creativity, or do you try to keep blocks of time open to creativity without, how do you work creativity into your life?
You can go first, Alex.
Oh, it's mine. Oh, no. Okay. Thank you. I think the question is, how do you bring creativity into your life? Is that it?
Yeah, but you still, you're living a life where you have deadlines and all these things. And as a creative person, sometimes it feels like those can get in the way of your creativity. How do you still maintain creativity while, working, busy and working and scheduling?
Yeah, I think they're not compatible. I think being really productive kind of makes you a bit dumb. So I think that I've been too productive, and I think it's really hard to juggle. This is just a off the cuff answer, but I want to be honest. I think it's difficult to juggle with both, and I haven't found the right way to smash deadlines and have the best ideas in the world for a project. I think, at least because I have a very single mind, very single focus. It's type A, so that that is the challenge for me. So I think you just have to embrace that and go through phases. Like, this is my productive phase. I smash it all, finish it off, and then the next 15 days, I'm only going to consume things that I need to consume to be creative, right? I think it's input output, and you have to own and create that space for you if that's how you are.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And I feel like creativity is such a fluid thing that comes and goes. And it's really important to not put pressure on yourself or stress yourself out and like, oh, I haven't been creative in a week. Like, oh no, I need to get that creative time. It's just let it flow and let it be natural. Sometimes when I'm in that production mode, sometimes you do have times where you're just getting it done to get it done because you have to get it done. And it's not glamorous, that's a harder part of the job. I will say, when I think what helps me when I am feeling less creative or I'm in a bit of a rut is doing something new, like learning something new, taking someone's workshop, or going to a place I haven't been before. Like maybe there's, a different park down the street that I've never gone to, and just going out and taking that in, that kind of revs up the creativity again. Or, trying to find an animal that I've never photographed before, like challenging yourself and doing new things. That I find that always helps the creativity to come back.
Mm. Michaela Jones is asking, how has the pandemic changed taking photographs of wildlife or being outside? And has that had an impact on each of your photography work right now?
Yeah, for me, it's been huge. I know it's kind of been very different for, every photographer. Some people seem to be thriving right now, and some people are really struggling. For me, it's been difficult because, I primarily survive off of working with like tourism boards or travel companies and my workshops. And right now, obviously, I can't expect students to fly and meet me somewhere for us to do an in-person workshop. So that's, all my workshops were canceled and moved, to next year. They're probably going to get moved to 2022 now at this point. Who knows? So, and especially since we were living in the van right as the pandemic hit, and then we chose Alaska, so we booked it to Alaska. In a way, it's been a good thing because it's stopped me to force stop traveling because we can't, and just explore my home, which is like what I've wanted anyway. So, I can go on a hike in Alaska, it's 30 minutes away and there's no one there. So I feel fine with that. But also I've spent obviously way more time at home because of the pandemic, and going back and re-editing old photos is so fun for me. I'm such a nostalgic person, and then seeing how my edits have changed over the years, that's so much fun for me. So yeah.
It's changed so many things for so many people. Alex, how have things changed for yourself?
I mean, I don't know yet. It's so soon, right? It's really hard to draw conclusions yet for me. But I've noticed that we tend to travel for longer terms if we do. Just like, you're not going for a 5-day trip somewhere, right? You're trying to stay longer. I mean, just here, I came to France. I decided to come to France, even though it is a pandemic, and go across the ocean because I thought, my parents and family wasn't getting any younger. And they were the ones saying, hey, it's, we'd rather see you than not. Like, we'll be careful, and we count on you to be responsible. So with their blessing, I sort of decided to come, but I came for a longer trip, right, for a few months, just because I don't think it was even responsible to come for a few days and come back. So yeah, I think it's changed the length of stays, and the work has been pretty similar. You just have to adapt, right? I mean, jobs get done. You just have to work with the new conditions and be responsible for everyone. Have somebody who's responsible for that and sort of get it done. I think it's how we adapt that makes us human.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We're kind of going down. There's about 10 minutes left in this webinar, so I just want to remind everyone that we're really grateful that you're here. We're super grateful if you've gotten Charly's wildlife photography workshop, or if you've gotten one of Alex's workshops or any workshop with Wildest. You can use the code WILD50, all in capitals, if you want to jump in on Charly's workshop. Well, let's do one more quick question, see if we can get this, and then let's end the webinar with kind of like what's going on moving forward, any exciting projects or things that you guys are looking forward to. Here we go. I just had this question up. Question is, just like how did your, this could be a long answer, but let's try and keep it a little bit short. How did your photography career start? There's a lot of people that are very interested in the hobby of photography, but where did it kind of teeter onto career from hobby? Was there a distinct moment where you're like, okay, now I'm a professional, or was it just because you started getting more work? And how was that transition? How did you really get into that? Either of you can start.
Do you want to go first, Alex?
I'll go for it, Charly, please.
Okay. Mine was kind of an evolution over like my whole life. As a kid, I had like disposable cameras. When I got a bit older, my dad gave me like his film camera. I did get my degree in photography, but I say constantly, you do not need that. I learned way more outside of college after than I did in it. So I don't think that's necessary, but I did. And then I, was a graphic designer and an illustrator for 10 years after college. And I got very burnt out, it just killed my creativity. And I started hiking a lot, and then I picked up my camera again, and it was like, I fell in love all over again. And, I got fired from my job because I wasn't present, because I was thinking about photography the whole time. And that kind of forced me into freelance, and it just kind of propelled from there.
Very interesting. You thought about photography so much that I remember when I watched your workshop, you kind of talked about that, and you kind of had that dream job with Microsoft where your parents had worked, and then this happened. And
yeah, and like my boss would like look over my shoulder and be like, she's Googling, cameras right now. What the hell? And I'd be like,
Alex, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think we all have imposter syndrome sometimes. The question is about how do you go from hobby to career?
Yeah.
When you start making money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what career means, but that's when photography takes a different meaning, a different taste to you. It's what sets, okay, what sets apart the professional from the amateur is the professional does it when he doesn't feel like doing it, versus the amateur who does it only when it feels like it. And both are right. Like there's no right or wrong. There's no better or worse. Just a path you choose. I think, yeah, just when you start quitting your job, your day job, then you realize it's a career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Doing it when you don't want to do it. Absolutely. I think that sums up a creative career in general. If you're a writer or anything, sometimes
God, yeah.
sitting down and
I
doing
mean, if
that.
you read writers' biographies, they never want to write until they start.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're kind of a few more minutes here left. I'd like to hear from both of you. What's next? What are you guys working on? And if there's anything you'd like to say to the audience before we check out, go ahead. Either of you can start.
For me, I have just spent, the last few months getting a printer and teaching myself how to print again. So I've been falling in love with that process. So I'm hoping to, over the next few months, start printing at home rather than going through, a third party that does all the printing for you. So I'm really excited to be like actually delivering prints to people personally. And then for next year, I'm just planning on working out workshops that I will, well, maybe not next year, workshops I'll be teaching in person in Alaska, which is going to be really special, obviously when everyone can travel again. And so I'm just kind of working on perfecting that right now.
Printing is something that we don't do enough, and I'm sure this is kind of an exciting process for you to get back into.
Yeah, holding a print in your hand and then, giving it to someone and sending them a note like, it's so special. I'm just so excited about that.
The tangibility of it is what makes photography so special, and we just see it always digital now. But I think everyone should get back into printing a bit more. Alex, how about yourself?
Oh yeah. What's next?
Yeah.
I think, well, first off, I'm down to stay a few more minutes to do more questions. It smells like really good food is being cooked downstairs, but I got a few more minutes to do a few more questions. I'm not sure if Charlie wants to do it, but no biggie. What's next is, God, where to start? There's a new product that I'm going to be releasing, which is not a workshop, but it's going to be in February or March. And I'm really excited about that. I've been spending the last 9 months building this product. It's mysterious. And I think we've reinvented a product category. So I'm really stoked. Then just getting working on new brand identity for the studio, like for my website and new logos and things like that. Just revamping the image, because I think photography and the way we present ourselves has evolved in the last years, and I want to reflect that change. People, we all want to expect more transparency and real and raw, and I think some of my platforms don't reflect that, so I have to update it. And yeah, I think that's, and then just like Charlie, actually, I also got a printer.
Nice.
Yeah, and you might have to give me some lessons, because the few prints I've done have been, I didn't really have time to play with it. Actually, Andrea installed it, and she's a sweetheart. She installed the whole thing, and I printed 1 or 2 photos and turned out just okay, but I might need some training and more practice. Sadly, the printer is 5,600 miles away from here right now, so I can't practice.
Charlie, are you okay staying around a few more minutes, answering a couple more questions?
Absolutely. Is it like Zoom, like the video ends, but we can still answer the questions? Is that how it's going to work?
I don't think there's a limit on our Zoom.
Okay, cool.
If for some reason at the end of this hour it ends, we apologize, but I don't think that it's going to end. This is an interesting question for Charlie. And I think, Alex, you didn't live in a van, but you spent a bit of time over the summer in a van. Having lived in a van, would you recommend it to other people? I've been thinking about it for the freedom of movement it allows and the option to take photos in many different places. I'd like to hear from both of you. That question is from Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, I think Living in a van is not for everyone. I think it's really glamorized right now. It's really glamorized on Instagram and YouTube, and everyone's building out their vans, and it's so popular right now. I think it can be really great. I think it's probably better for single people that don't have dogs. In our tiny van. It's also about budget too. We can afford a 100K Sprinter. That these are the most popular ones that you see. That they're like little mansions on wheels. Like I think that would have made our lives a lot easier. But we got what we could afford. And it's tiny. It's like 12 square feet with Josh is 6'2", and then we have 2 dogs, so there was no room. When we would sit at like our little like table, his head would hit the ceiling. So like this thing. And then at night the dogs would sleep on me. So I was just sleeping horrible. And it wasn't for me. As much as I love being outside, it was just like, go, drive to next location, go. And it really just like drained me. I wish we could have been in the position where, we could have spent like months at each spot, but, we were doing it as the pandemic was like, well, we were winding down as the pandemic was starting. And so then that just really like cut it off. Because everything was closed. So when you live in a van and everything's closed, that is a nightmare. Especially, bathroom wise and things like that. But I think it's great for people that want to, get off grid, go travel, explore, find things. I think it's great for that. But I think in our situation, it was different because we were trying to find home. So we were pretty exhausted by the end of it and just like wanted a place to settle down.
Do you still have the van?
Yep, it's on the driveway. He's covered in snow right now, Sushi, but he's doing good.
So now Sushi, though, now that you have a home, I'm imagining that the van will take a new life because it's now for fun trips.
Yeah, now Sushi's like a blessing because he's going to be like weekend warrior where we can like take him for camping trips and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Alex, you spent a bit of time in a van this summer with Andrea. It looked very fun. How was that experience? I think it was your first longer time in a van, wasn't it?
Yeah, I rented one. I think that was, I guess, the first thing that I thought was a good idea. I should rent one before you build one. And I think with the current, health crisis the world is going through, it is a great way to travel because, we went on a trip in June, at a time where it was questionable, and we wanted to be very responsible, so we just packed all the groceries in the van, and we had 7 days of autonomy, and we didn't really interact with people, which is sad, but that was the right thing to do. So I think it's a good way to travel nowadays.
Charly, Cody has a question here about like, is there anywhere that you have a story or like some place where people can learn more about your van living experience?
Yeah, Josh and I have our joint account, which is the Save Lease. We also have so much video footage that we're trying to get through to start like our YouTube, where we do like our van tour and stuff and put together all the footage we got while living in the van. But yeah, it's just, that's such an overwhelming like project because in the moment we were so exhausted, there was no way we were going to like edit videos and put them on YouTube while we were in the midst of it. So we'll probably get that up eventually. But yeah, for now, just our van account is the Save Lease. Yeah, you can ask us questions there if you want to know more about van life.
And is that going to live on as the Weekend Warrior account?
Yeah, so it is. And also because we bought the A-frame cabin, now we're splicing it. So it's, kind of half van life, half cabin life, which is going to be really fun to show the process of making over our house pretty much.
Very cool. Very cool. Alex, you put a YouTube video out of your experience, right?
Yes, I did. It was fun.
There's a question directly related to your YouTube account from Matthew Jacobs. He says, Alex, please give an in-depth update to the future outlook of your YouTube channel. I noticed that your uploads have there's like, you go through moments of consistency and not consistency. Is there, some plan going forward with YouTube?
The issue with YouTube, it needs to be real. But for a photographer, I feel like the reality has to match also a certain aesthetic and filmmaking standards. So then you need to work with somebody to do these films, like a filmmaker and an editor, because I can't do it, but I would like to do it. So that is the plan. There isn't one, because there's so many things I'd like to focus on, and YouTube is certainly one of them, but it's not at the top of the list, just because I haven't been able to find the right balance of working with a filmmaker. I mean, we've done really cool videos, don't get me wrong, and there's a new one actually coming next week. But I like to be more involved in the making of the videos. I just simply don't have the time. So there'll be updates every couple of months. That's what we can expect, and I can only hope to be more consistent.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. It is really fulfilling though. Like, it's an awesome experience to watch somebody's video, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Question here from Anna Cowper. She's saying, interested to hear if either of you have other creative outlets. So obviously photography is your creative outlet, is writing or drawing, illustrating, what else is in each of your lives?
For me, it has been drawing and painting as well. I haven't done it in a while, but that's another thing I love. I also like collect weird things. Like, I have a collection of feathers that I've like collected over the years, just finding things on the ground. But no, I kind of feel like once photography took over, honestly, it just became my whole world and my obsession. And I think if you are going to be professional full time, it has to be your obsession, and you have to live and breathe it. And that does put other hobbies on the back burner. But, I love things like reading and doing some yoga and stuff like that.
Alex?
Yes, I'd say cooking is an outlet for me, because it's kind of like photography, right? Like, you can try to combine ingredients to make something, right? Same thing with photos. You combine ingredients, light meets a landscape, meets a scene, meets a character, then they have a photo. Same thing with cooking, right? Like, 3 ingredients meet this pan, and then something magical might happen or not. So anything where I can experiment is fun. I enjoy doing some writing, just journaling every day, and walking is another outlet that I really enjoy. I don't produce anything except satisfaction for myself, but that satisfaction leads to other outputs in photography and in the before mentioned hobbies.
I know cooking is very important for you. I remember making that pasta for you and Andrea one night, and I was so nervous.
Oh my God.
Because there's some pressure when you make dinner for Alex.
No,
I'm just
You're
kidding.
making dinner. That's already super nice. You can make it, mushroom soup. That's an inside joke for the YouTubers. But Joel is a really good cook and made an amazing pasta that I still remember, and I still wish I could experience again.
That'll happen again sometime. Which printers are you both using? There was a question about that.
Mine, I believe, is way smaller than Alex, because I wanted to start small. I believe mine is the Epson, I think it's P9700, something like that. And I love it. I was blown away by the quality. Highly recommend.
Cool. And when you're printing, are you like kind of concerned, like, it looks different from the screen to the print? Is it hard to mimic? Do you need good?
I know that's a huge thing that people struggle with. I haven't had any issues. I don't know. Like, I was just like, I didn't do any calibrating or anything like that, and it's coming out great. So I was like, cool.
And Alex, you kind of set up a little, not a little, but a pretty big printer in your garage.
Yeah.
You've done some big prints now.
Is what?
You've done some pretty big prints with it.
Yes. Like I said, I'm still working through the kinks, and one big print is not a cheap experiment. So I've just learned I should experiment in small things. Or just making Command P and printing something the size of a wall. Because you're like, whoa, that's a lot of ink. And then you look at the price of ink and then you regret. But it's called the Prograph 4000. It's from Canon. And it is the size of an oil tanker. It takes half the garage, but it's been awesome. I mean, I really relate to what Charlie's saying about the joy of holding a print. And it's, in a world where there's a lot of fulfilling printing warehouses, printing things for people that people get, I'm excited just to do just like Charlie and make printing more personal again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we have a really great question kind of to close the webinar. It's from Conrad. Reflecting on each of your journeys, what would you do differently when it comes to your careers or photography? Charlie, do you want to go first, or Alex?
Oh, Charlie.
I think what I would have done differently is I kind of speak on this in the workshop a little bit. I would have valued myself more. I think I kind of did the thing, starting out where, if a brand reached out to me, I was just so excited. And then they'd be like, oh, do you want to do this for trade and just, work for free essentially? And I, did a bit of that and then realized like, oh, I'm not making any money because I'm not valuing myself. I could be charging for this. And I would have pep talked to myself to do that sooner. But back then when I was starting, there wasn't really any guidance on that. It was only, until now that I feel like there's a lot more like knowledge and you can Google things about like what to charge and things like that. Whereas with social media, so I think, I would have encouraged my former self to value my work quicker, and to not look at what everyone else is doing and find myself quicker.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people could take some of that advice for sure about their self-value and whatnot. Alex, what would you like to say to that?
I mean, I agree with what Charlie was saying, and I would add that I would start first. I would start earlier. I would take it seriously earlier. It's fun to tinker with something, but if you feel like there's something there, I think we shouldn't hesitate too long and just send it. I think that was, I took it pretty seriously from the get-go, but I wish I did it even earlier. Like, the kid who's 10 years old.
Moan.
Like that is right there an example of that. And I'll meet kids who are 17, 16 and making already amazing photography. So I'm like, these guys will go so far. Like, I think our job is just to sort of lay out the brickwork, and then, somebody else puts a brick above it and they go higher and higher. Right. Another thing I would do is meet even more people. I think that's what really has helped my career and a lot of other people's career is meeting people. So I would try to meet even more people. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't discriminate or discern or try to judge people from it. It's really easy to judge people in advance. And, I try not to have any opinions before I meet somebody, and then it's usually a really good surprise. So I'd just be out there more.
Yeah. I think this is an incredible way to end the webinar. I appreciate both of your time. Charlie and Alex, thank you a lot so much for joining us, and anyone that's participated that was here to watch. We're really grateful.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Jolman.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
No worries. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you guys again here at some point.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Take care. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Bye.